One of the issues that one hears a lot about in contemporary moral discussions is the topic of abortion. And certainly in these few minutes I'm not going to be able to explore the full range of issues pertaining to abortion. For some people this is a very emotional subject. I remember some years ago teaching a college course in ethics, and I was talking about the issue of abortion, and we were using a textbook that had articles from several different perspectives on the subject of abortion. One was a very famous article written around the decision Roe versus Wade that was a major defense of abortion. And then there were a couple of articles that took different positions. One took a very strong position against abortion, and the other took a more in the middle of the road stance, allowing for certain exceptions, but in general being opposed to abortion. And as I taught the material, I remember on one particular class I was trying to make a strong case against abortion for students to consider the arguments on that side. And I remember a young lady getting up, and she had a look of anger on her face, and she rushed out of the room. And I remember learning from that experience that one never knows who you're talking to. In that particular class there were probably some people who either knew people or perhaps themselves had been affected by the decision to have an abortion. And that deeply personal decision that a person has made makes it very difficult. Just like all moral issues that directly affect ourselves, it's very, very difficult for us to think objectively about them because we have so much of our own selves invested in the question. What I'd like to do is just throw out what I think are some of the important issues to keep in mind as we consider the issue of abortion. First of all, I think we could ask whether or not the subject is even worth arguing about. Why would we spend so much time debating this particular question? It seems to me that at root it is a question about why is human life valued? Why is it valued, and when is it to be valued? To me this is the core issue with abortion, and it's almost a line drawn in the sand for many people to say which side of the line will you be on with respect to your theory or your theoretical underpinnings for valuing human life. I think that's the deepest question that we can ask, and it's one that I would encourage you to reflect on. Why is human life valuable? Is it valuable because of some function that it can carry out? Is it valuable because it's conscious, or because it has a fully developed capacity for education or for interpersonal human interaction, or what is it? What is it that makes human life meaningful, valuable, and worthy of protect under the law? Oftentimes the debate over abortion is set up in terms of catchwords and phrases that people use to try to polarize people around certain positions, where they say that on the one side those who defend abortion claim that theirs is a pro-choice position, and on the other side you have people who call their position pro-life, who say that to allow for abortion means that one is opposed to life. In my experience, I found that people on both sides of this particular question value both choice and human life. Very rarely do I find, for example, a pro-abortion person who would argue human life is not valuable at all, therefore abortion is simply the decision of someone who has power over another human organism, and they can destroy it if they want. And they wouldn't argue against doing the same for a 2-hour-old child, or a 6-week-old child, or for a 90-year-old Alzheimer's patient, or whatever. I've rarely, if ever, run across people that take that kind of an extreme position regarding human life. Most people want to take some kind of position that human life is unique, it's valuable, it is to be respected and be treated with care. On the other end of the spectrum, I don't find that people who defend life, who defend a position against abortion, I don't find them devaluing human choice. I don't find that people who consider themselves pro-life say that human choice is irrelevant. All that matters is life, and that human choice and freedom matters for nothing. To the contrary, I think that people on both sides of this question value both choice, or human liberty and freedom, and on the other side, I think that they both want to value human life. The question is, under what circumstances do we value human life? It seems to me that the pro-choice position, as it's called, or the defense of abortion position, sees human life in two different spheres or two different realms. Maybe we could think of it as two concentric circles. If you imagine two circles, one around the other, and the circle in the middle will represent those human lives that will be protected by law, that will be considered ones that are to be defended, and that it would be murder to destroy those lives. In the other circle, the one surrounding it, we'll put all human beings. And so all human beings, according to the pro-choice position, are not to be protected by law. Only certain ones are to be protected by law. In this case, in reference to abortion, the pro-choice position argues that there is a certain number of human beings, or a certain category of human beings, or categories, that are protected by law, and then there are others that are not. So, for instance, the unborn child, up to a certain point, or to certain stages, however one wants to define it, the unborn child does not fall in that central circle. They can be destroyed at the will of the parent, or the will of the mother. The other circle, the inside circle, is contained of those who should be allowed to live, and they should have not have that right to life taken away from them. The challenging question, it seems to me, with respect to abortion is, how do you draw the lines, or how do you draw the circle? Who will be included on the inside circle of those who will be defended? And perhaps even more importantly, why? Why do you put some inside the inner circle and others you leave on the outside circle? And is there a way to clearly differentiate the two? Certainly, no one would argue, I don't think, that the organism growing in the womb of its mother, the unborn child, I don't think anyone would argue that it's not a human organism. Those who defend abortion, at least in my experience of studying and reading on this subject, those who defend abortion argue that there are certain undeveloped capacities in that unborn child, that once they are developed, and after they are born, or perhaps late in the pregnancy, then that child should be protected. Now, those things have varied. Some have argued in times past for heartbeat, or brain waves, or quickening, or perhaps the capacity to feel pain, or whatever. All of them being sort of developmental features of the human organism. No one can deny that it's a human organism, that it's a living human reality that is in the womb of its mother. The question is, at what point does it have the qualities or the characteristics that would place it within the community of those who are defended by law? The pro-life position takes the stance that those who fall in the circle of humanity, or human beings, should all be protected by law. In other words, we should not take any human being and destroy them, especially innocent human beings, perhaps in cases of self-defense or legitimate war, or that kind of thing. Perhaps those cases can be justified, but even in those cases, it's a matter of trying to preserve life that requires that one use deadly force. So, for instance, if someone breaks in my home in the middle of the night and is trying to kill one of my family members, and I hit them over the head with a baseball bat and they die, my whole intention was to protect the life of my family, and someone has become an aggressor against that. It's not good to kill anyone. That in itself is not a good, but to protect my family is a good, and that might justify an act of self-defense. In any case, with respect to the unborn child is not an aggressor. The unborn child has chosen nothing. They have simply found themselves, or they are growing into, a living human organism that will be just like you and me in respect to our capacities, our powers, our hopes, our dreams, our wishes, and so on. So the question is, do we defend human life, or do we consider human life valuable because of some developed capacity in it, or some fully functioning capacity, or rather, do we value human life because it is human life, that it's intrinsically valuable, or is it valuable only because of some developed capacity? I suggest to you that arguing that human life is only valuable because of some developed capacity is a slippery slope. There's no way to figure out where to stop it. It's arbitrary. To make a choice and say these people are to be protected by law because they have this developed capacity creates all kinds of, I think, unsolvable problems for the pro-choice position. Instead, I would suggest that we, first of all, examine and figure out why human life is valuable. I would argue, and the position that I take as a Christian, is that human life is valuable because we have this most noble of capacities. That is the ability to know, to love, to understand, to seek after God, to seek after what is good and true, things that are qualitatively, intrinsically valuable. They have an inherent value that is rooted ultimately in God. Since we are made in the image and likeness of God, we bear this resemblance to God, our cause. We have a value that is rooted in and linked to the eternal God, and therefore we have an eternal significance. If one does not believe in God, and if one does not ground human value in the intrinsic worth of human nature, irregardless of secondary functions or actualization of certain functions that a person has, if a person does not believe that, then my question is, where do you ground human value? And it seems to me that the only place you're going to ground it is in some type of subjective value that you have. There will be no objective rootedness in some type of source of objective good beyond yourself. It will just be your decision to value one thing over another. And in that case, I think it's going to be profoundly difficult to say that if your decision about what human life is valuable and which one is not is analogously similar to someone's choice of whether they like ice cream of chocolate flavor or they like strawberry flavored ice cream, if that's the extent of it, that it's simply my feeling that life should be valued under these circumstances and not under those, like I might want to eat this kind of food and not that kind of food, if it's just a subjective choice that's rooted only in my feelings or my wishes, then it's going to be very difficult, I think, to present a compelling case against all kinds of abuses against humanity. Now, one might, argue that I'm being extreme in this, but I don't think so. I don't think that I'm making a case that is not a valid one or a sound one. And so I encourage you to think about it and ask yourself the question, where is human value located? What is it that makes us human, and what is it that makes us truly valuable so that life should be considered holy and sacred and protected by law? And if you can't locate a grounds for that, ask yourself the question, upon what basis do I draw the line here rather than somewhere else? And it seems to me that the cards will fall, the dominoes will begin to fall, at least in the bigger picture historically, maybe not today or tomorrow, but perhaps decades down the road, people will see more clearly the implications of certain ideas, and they will find themselves incapable of offering, I think, a powerful response in defense of human life. It's sort of like what C.S. Lewis argues in his book, The Abolition of Man. He argues that once human beings, through science, have made of everything an object to control and subjected it to human manipulation and human control, beware when we turn ourselves into also merely an object of scientific control, because then at that point we've lost our humanity, and we've lost the uniqueness and the basis for moral dignity and holiness or sanctity of human life. And I think that will have all kinds of tragic consequences and implications for us as a human family.